Lord. Good afternoon to the entire country, Trinidad and Tobago, and all those that are joining us at home and from abroad. And we want to welcome you to our first press briefing for the week. As I promised, we will try to do this about twice per week so as to ensure you keep abreast of the situation in Tobago. Last press briefing, I was clear in sharing with you some data that essentially will point to the fact that what we are treating with might be our biggest crisis of that nature, perhaps since Hurricane Flora. Certainly, it's not on the scale of Hurricane Flora, which impacted the entire island, but it is at a scale that can impact and threaten our entire economy. And so we have been doing our very best, and I think we have been doing a successful job thus far under the coordination of Director Stewart and others in ensuring that we are able to contain this thing within the 15-kilometer radius, that we are dutifully doing the cleanup operations in tandem with what is the international best practice and in tandem with sustainable practices. So we're doing it in an environmentally safe manner, while at the same time navigating all the administrative and other issues that come along with a crisis of this nature. I have Director Stewart with me, and I have Mr. James Strim who will introduce you subsequently. But I wish to ask Director Stewart to now present you with some updates, operational updates, and then I'll introduce you, Mr. James Strim, and the role that he's playing on this matter. So go ahead, Director Stewart.
So let me say a very hearty good afternoon to our listening audience far and wide. I know this is a well-anticipated media briefing whereby people want to hear about a success story. And I think we are armed with that success story this afternoon in that this is day 27. And I'm very pleased to know that I'm part of that reporting group where I can say that we have a handle on this particular spill, which we would have seen the type of impact it would have had on our ecosystem. When I speak about the ecosystem, I speak about our very life on the island of Tobago. In other words, it's tied into the environment in terms of our beaches, our greenery. We live off the fish of the sea. I think it's one of the most booming economy elements of that bring resources to the island. Some people feel it is doing much better than even agriculture on the island, the fisher folks. Recreation and all that goes along, even the aqua people that reach at Mount Irving Beach on the morning for restoration and rehabilitation of their health. The ecosystem provides that for all of us. Going forward, however, I will want to speak to some specifics. We have started this journey just around the 7th, whereby the 17 or 15 kilometers of our shoreline was impacted in a very, very negative way with hydrocarbons. And you know the history of the impact of that vessel, Gulfstream. So Operation Gulfstream continues. It continues with our command structure in place, utilizing the incident command system effectively, allowing for 3 major locations to be manned in a way that we think that we have command and control over this incident. So in Scarborough, we have what is called the Joint Operations Center, which we have a number of players even out of Port of Spain, the Ministry of Energy, the EMA, IMA, the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, and Heritage Petroleum. Even we have had the input of Atlantic LNG and also a number of vendors, to name a few: Kaizen Environment, Ampipa, Tiger Tanks, the Tobago fisher folks who have been playing a Hercules role in all of this. You know, that type of role, that Hercules role that they are playing helps us to allow for the sea logistics as to how you allow for anchoring of the booms and things like that, inspections of what is happening with the booms. You know, the fisher folks have really stood up. So I want to take this opportunity to comment on that and also to signal to Mr. Douglas our gratitude for him being able, Curtis Douglas, to mobilize those fisher folks in the way in which he would have done. Going back to the technical areas, there are many institutions of the Tobago House of Assembly that you can imagine that are playing key roles in all of this. Last but not least, Chief, I think we should mention that, which you will hear from Mr. James Trim in a while in his introduction, but looking forward, we recognize that we are dealing with a marathon, another quick sprint. And therefore, there is a very reality that we are treating with it is this thing based on its distance or the time it will take for us to really bring it to closure. It will very well dovetail into what is known as a project itself, and therefore it should be managed like that in the very near future. The chief administrator, along with some other technical persons, have formulated a committee, which will be an oversight committee to provide, technical assistance to this particular, what will be a project going forward after we come out of the emergency phase. Finally, one of the things that I need to communicate to the members of the public is to have patience with the process. I feel very comfortable, Chief, that we have the necessary skill sets around us, both technically, administratively, and even those who can make financial injections into all of this going forward. You would have heard the pronouncement of the Prime Minister a few weeks ago, understanding that this is going to be a very costly exercise, and therefore all the help that we will need will be there to support what Tobago wants, Tobago will get. I'm quoting Manning now, so these things are going to be, those are some of the expectations going forward. And I want to stress that having a handle on things and having those team players that we will be able to come through very safely with the understanding it is a marathon, and therefore Petrobras would have advised us to look at it that way. The emergency phase can go up to 6 to 8 months, and also with a year and a half before you could have a management on the issue as it relates to waste management. And that is a key, one of the challenges that we have going forward as to how we treat with that. It's going to determine how we come out of this incident itself. Thank you very much. Over to you, Chief.
Thank you very much, Director Stewart. Director Stewart just pointed to the fact that we have set in place some management controls. So we have a small internal team that's led by the Director of Natural Resources and the Environment. That's Mr. Beckers. And Mr. Beckers, along with Administrator Carl Murray and others, have been strategically pulled together to do our own internal checks and balances. That is to ensure we can properly corral all of the varying contractors in the space, ensure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, ensure that what we are being billed for, they have in fact delivered and will continue to deliver. And we also brought on a technical consultant in the person of Mr. James Trim, who is on the left of me, who will give us some further advice along the way so as to ensure that this matter, which is new to the Tobago House of Assembly, that we are in fact responding in the best possible way. So I'll allow Mr. James Trim to introduce himself to you at this time.
Thank you very much, Chief Secretary. Sure. And good afternoon to each and everyone. It's a pleasure being here. And I'm indeed delighted to be of support and assistance to the Tobago House of Assembly in this regard. being born and bred here myself. By way of background, I think I should state that my background is both in utilities as well as in energy. I did work with the Water and Sewer Authority in quality control, that is a laboratory work, chemical and bacteriological analysis, as well as in training and safety, and then before moving on to the National Gas Company, where I spent almost 20 years. And with that opportunity, I had again, been lucky to serve as president of Trinidad and Tobago Emergency Mutual Aid Scheme. But my background professionally is water and wastewater control. I have an honors diploma in that, as well as environmental science out of University of Oklahoma in the US, as well as safety management in that regard. I had the professional experience too in working with, for example, the EMA in the development of those standards for waste or water discharges and that sort of thing. So I've been working with the institutions and even with COSTAT in developing courses for, or rather the degree program for occupational safety and health. So my background, my professional background allows for my being able to support the Tobago House of Assembly in this regard. Now, what has been happening, why I think is appropriate for my help in this area. At the emergency phase, one would gather together the resources so that we can mitigate and eliminate the threat that is in existence to this part of the country. All right, but the thing of it is now that because of the duration that we have been managing this exercise, it is now prudent that we move into a project phase. So we are transitioning from an emergency phase into the project phase. And having regard to this, while we're doing this, I should point out that when we're managing an emergency, which is what I've been doing for years, both in the industry, in the petrochemical and oil and gas industry, is that we will use a well-established system called the Incident Management or Incident Command System, which TEMA is driving. However, as I did indicate, to run that, there is a certain structure, which includes also some reporting structures, which TEMA has, I dare say. In fact, TEMA is one of the leading emergency response agencies in the country, if I may say so. All right, so there are certain forms and instruments that we employ to run that. What we want to do now is to put into context those types of instruments that we're using, so that in this transition we have proper accountability, proper structure. And the THA has recognized that we need to put some structure in place. We need to put some accountability in place. After all, ladies and gentlemen, this thing has a significant cost to the taxpayer. Now, so my role in this regard is to support, because there is indeed that incident, or what we call a consolidated incident system in place. So what my role would be is to monitor and ensure that those practices and procedures that are being employed at this stage are in keeping with best industry practices or industry standards, if you will. So the way we have these forms structured in this consolidated incident action plan forms is that you need to state upfront what are your objectives, or rather define the situation, identify your objectives, and the type of tactics, operational tactics or strategic action that you propose to take. And mind you, also those actions or activities that you're taking have to be consistent with industry practices. Indeed, there are industry practices for the use of booms, for the use of skimmers, and all these sort of things. So my role is to support the THA in that regard. so that at the end of the day, including the amount of resources. So you have an objective and you've got to control certain objectives of control, and then we have to establish that those objectives have been met based upon what has been defined. Now, after we've done that, we can then put up like a dashboard, if you will, as to where we are. So you can be in Germany, and you could be wherever part of the world online. We can tell where we are and what is outstanding. And if there is, let's say, in the update, because I've done this, for example, for other companies since my retirement, you've got like updates. And let's say you're doing it red, yellow, green, and if an activity for the week is, let's say, yellow, you've got to indicate to the client what is the reason for that update, whether it's resources or whether it's weather conditions, whatever have you. So in essence, what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that the THA wants to have a structure in place that is going to allow for best industry practice, that's going to allow also for a smooth running, and at the end of the day, we get what we are paying for. So that's in essence what we are about here. All right, and moreover, so that when that is happening, there's also an element of communication. So the team that is working on this incident will also be in a position to really adequately advise stakeholders, community personnel, people who are living in the vicinity of the spill, for example, what's happening in Lambo, or what's happening just outside of Scarborough, etc. So they'll be in a better position to faithfully and accurately advise as to what's taking place. So in essence, if I may round off at this point, ladies and gentlemen, is to support the THA in that regard by way of having in place and maintaining that structure that's going to allow us to mitigate and at the end of the day eliminate the threat that is to the island. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trim. Just some additional bits of information before we take the questions. To date, the Tobago Assembly has set aside $15 million towards the offsetting the costs of the operations. That's nowhere close to being able to pay for the entire operations, but that is to allow us to begin to pay for operations. As you would imagine, this started as an emergency, as Mr. Trim pointed out. Now that we are in the project phase of this, moving from it being an emergency to projectizing the thing properly, we now have to begin to consider payments to those that are on the ground and have been working without payments to date. And so we have set aside $15 million to begin to treat with some of those expenses that we expect to come in. While that is happening, then we have those in accounts dutifully doing their role, doing their part when it comes to looking at the invoices that they are being receiving and dutifully doing the checks and the balances so that payments can begin as soon as is possible. So I wanted to also make you aware of that as a significant update. So can we have your questions?
What I wanted to find out from you is, Mr. Chief Secretary, in terms of this being an international situation, I know you would have seen the report over the weekend. What is your view on that? And also, Martin George, head of the Tobago Chamber, he's calling for criminal charges to be laid in the matter. I know you have always said that the THA is doing its own investigation and you intend to also look further into the matter. What's your view on those two?
Well, for starters, we have seen a vow from the officials in Bonaire that they will take legal action with regards to this matter, and it is their right so to do. And any government anywhere has a responsibility to protect the interests, and that includes environment, economy, and the people of the territory for which they govern. And so that's their right, and I will invariably support them taking action as is their right. With regards to the THA can only take civil action because we don't control the mechanisms of state to be able to take criminal action against those who are responsible for this. That will fall in the gap of the central government. But where the THA is concerned, we are doing all that's necessary, collecting all the data, because we very much intend to take civil action against those that are responsible for the matter. I don't think the dust is significantly clear as yet in terms of with whom this responsibility lies, but when we are at that place, then we will take the necessary strike action as a responsible government for the island.
Good afternoon. Mr. Stewart, the salvaging attempts, how is that going?
Quite well indeed. What we have experienced over the past 72 hours is, to me, is the answer we've been looking for, as I can report that there is no longer any oil emitting from the vessel. The TNT salvage team, they have taken control over that process of the vessel itself, being engaged by the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries. In extension to that, we also have the Novi Ocean Buster that has been in operation over the past 3 days or so. Today being the third day of its operation. I was very moved when I saw the collection based on the technology that we would have landed for this particular challenge that we had going forward. I know based on the information that was afforded to us that they are looking at 4 of those busters, or 2 will be operating within the space of Tobago, and the other 2 will be tracking down through surveillance, satellite imagery, and other means, flights that will do reconnaissance to see exactly how far the spread is located at this time. I know the last time I spoke to you, I would have said it may be just over beyond 800 kilometers away from the shores of Trinidad and Tobago, west of Crown Point. So that is the game plan going forward, and I just want to reiterate that the technology is working quite well with excellent results, and to me that speaks volumes. It means, therefore, we have to look at other challenges ahead of us, and I did mention them. I will not repeat it to fuel another question. All right.
Okay, thanks. Back on the same topic of the salvaging, I know we have spoken about, plans to plug. So seeing that it's not leaking anymore, what is the next step? Is it that we're going to probably try to plug just in case it still has oil in it? If not, is the next step also to probably start to get the vessel out of the water?
Extraction is the next step, based on the they would have did a hydrographic survey of the area. They would have engaged architects that will allow you to understand the construct of that type of vessel. For those who may know what the vessel look like, they are able to look at the chambers as to how they are constructed and determine whether or not there is additional cells in the vessel that oils can be extracted from. So it's a very careful process. At this stage, what they are doing is moving the oils that are, or the hydrocarbon, let me be politically correct, the hydrocarbons that is on the surface of the water, they are mopping it up, and it's doing a fantastic job. That is what I can say about that.
I know you told me that you want to stay away from timelines, but
Yes.
do we have an idea of when we would like this salvaging to be completed? Is it that in the next 6 months the vessel may be there? Do we have any idea?
No, I think the scope of works is one that lend itself to how they make their assessments. That will be able to determine their operational plan. It will form the part of what you call operational measle, where you can measure those timelines in a particular way, estimated timelines that will allow you to know exactly how long the work is going to take. So I don't want to guess that at this stage, and probably some of our couple meetings down the road, they should be able to give an estimated time as to how soon that phase of the operations will take.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Augustine, Guardian Media published a story on Sunday in relation to the owner of the vessel and other information that probably the public may not have known about the vessel and its owners and where it actually came from. Dr. Abraham Olalikan, I hope I pronounced that correctly, he claimed that the vessel is his own. Have you seen the article? Do you plan to reach out to Dr. Abraham?
I've seen the article and I'll respond in due course. Perhaps there's one more bit of information that I should share with you. You know that we have been doing significant amount of air quality testing as a control measure. Another piece of good news that I think will settle the minds, especially when it comes to the fishing industry, is that the IMA, they have been testing fish products coming out of Lambo, Pigeon Point, and Scarborough, meaning that they will just go to those 3 areas and collect sample of the fish being sold on the market and do testing. And I'm happy to say that to date, all of their tests have shown that what is being sold on the market is very safe to eat and is not polluted, right? But we will continue to do so, continue to do those testing at least every 2 weeks or so as to ensure that that which is on the market remains safe for human consumption. Right? The result should not be surprising because where the actual spill is taking place is very close to shore. And given the species that we tend to consume a lot in Tobago and is sold on the market, they are not really in the vicinity of where the spill is. You know, and so, but we will continue to do those tests as a safety mechanism so as to ensure that 1, the fishing industry is secured, and 2, above all other things, that which we consume remains safe. So I just wanted to share that good news with you as well.
Before you go, I just have one other question.
Sure.
Just in light of the crime situation and the murder on Saturday, what's your view on the matter? Because even yesterday now, a body was found in Canoe Bay.
Well, the body found in Canoe Bay, the information that has reached my desk seems to suggest that may have been suicide. And, you know, that's just unfortunate. I'm not sure what were the circumstances that prompted to that. But again, you know, there is a need for us to always check in on each other and the mental health of each other, especially people who seem like they're doing well, and ensure that your friends are doing well as they say that they are. So let's check in on each other. With regards to the murder that happened in Pembroke, that one was a shocker for me because I know the gentleman. I taught the gentleman at Speyside High. That's Jafari Freezers. I taught him. I know him very, very well. He was not known to be a young man with significant behavior issues at school. In fact, generally a very quiet, extremely quiet young man. The last time I spoke with him, I was somewhere in the Cardiff area there, and Cardiff that's in that area between Pembroke and Morgan on that back road there. And he was just there hanging out with his friends and relatives. And we had a very good conversation. He WhatsApped me a couple times thereafter. So it's someone I know, you know. And then subsequent to the murder, I started seeing photos and photos that seemed to suggest, maybe I shouldn't go on, but I started seeing photos that seemed to suggest a side to him that I don't know, I didn't know rather. But certainly my sympathies are with the family, and I will be reaching out because I said he's someone I know. I know his mommy, who was his main guardian well. I know some of his relatives. I taught him, and coincidentally, the week before, we carried a motion about in the house about treating with crime and the sort of community intervention that is required, and how we are going to corral the services of the entire Tobago House of Assembly to treat with this matter. So, you know, it's just one of those things that really and truly is very heartbreaking, and we're going to continue to put the effort in. That's from the THA perspective, but we also need the effort to be put in from the intelligence services, the national security apparatus, and others that, you know, are responsible for crime fighting as the primary forte. Well, I even shared excerpts from the letter. I earlier in January asked, you know, for us to meet on the matter of crime. He did not say no to a meeting, but he indicated that he has sent the letter to the Attorney General for a review. My letter, that is. But he indicated that he continues to be apprised or advised of the state of our insecurity as a nation, including Tobago. I don't know what that means.
With regards to cleanup efforts, could you give us, Mr. Stewart, probably, could you give us an idea of how far we are? Is it that we are over 50%? Is it that we are almost done with cleanup efforts? How far are we?
Yeah, that's a very ticklish one in terms of when you put figures to it, or percentage. But based on what, from our observation, and if I to work with figures, I know definitely that we have over 24 frac tanks that are on the island, and 90% of those tanks are in their full state. Now, what it comprises of is some with hydrocarbon mixed with seawater or other liquids. And they require what they call decantering, and therefore that will release a certain amount of space that is so needed in the process going forward. But when you look at the ground itself, along the shorelines, we can look and see 65% of the beach areas are in a state of pristine conditions in terms of they have even started working on the rocks as well. They're utilizing large volumes and low pressure to ensure that they use a methodology that will allow us not to have chemicals intervene into the process. And that is going along quite well, where the areas that they are testing it on some of the shoreline areas. And there's a huge amount of work to be done in that regards. And that work sometimes could take months. There's also the mangrove. The mangrove is another task which must be done in some cases manually in terms of how they get into the mangrove and do the necessary cleaning. So that in itself, so even when you look at from a bird eye's view, you will see us returning normal functions of the society. But what we are speaking about is an assault on the ecosystem, and therefore that element of it, especially with the waste management plan, that waste management plan is so imperative for us going forward, because what we have done is more or less caress it and have it stored, but we have to make strong determination as to how we will deal with those temporary cells that were constructed during these emergencies. As Mr. Trim would have guided, these are the sensitive matters that we have to treat with. Things that may not immediately jump into focus for persons concerned, but the environmentalists and understanding what can happen with what one may call the percolation of the soil, and if it's not properly managed, eventually what we would have just done is just remove a disaster from on the sea and bring it onto the land, and that will show up what they call that cut bush or cut flower syndrome, where things look nice and dandy, but because it's a cut flower, eventually it rots or it decays, and then you start to get the ill effects of it and you don't like what you're seeing afterwards. So we don't want that syndrome to be part of our legacy going forward. So I ask for your patience. I would have said this is a marathon, and those persons who have been so affected, Brazil, the advisors carefully, don't rush this thing. It's a long haul. It's a marathon and not something that a quick over. So life will become back as to normal, but there is also those species of life that we have to guard for and protect, because they are still being impacted one way or the other, and that's the ecosystem. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it did. Thank you for your response. Mr. Augustine, I just have one more question. The contents in the Guardian article, did it surprise or shock you, or does it correspond with the information that you got from your whistleblower?
I would prefer not to answer that question at this time. Nice try, though. Nice try, though. But I want to say this, though, that, on my way here, I saw them power washing the bridges and the roadway, and the edges of the road and so on. And that to me is a very positive sign, a positive sign that we're getting there. You pass and you look at the seawater between Lambo and here. It's much, much clearer than it was. Another very, very positive sign. So we are getting to the point, as Mr. Director Stewart pointed out, whereby we will be able to return some practical functions of some of the public spaces, in particular the roadway between Lambo and here. But we know that there are some things that the average person won't pay attention to, that we have to pay attention to, given that our industries are reliant on the environment, that we have to pay attention to, that will take a bit more time and a bit more finesse in the cleanup operation. And I think I pointed out at a previous presser that we can't just march into the mangrove with excavators and dig out the fuel substance that's there. That is a sort of very delicate type of work that will take some time. But certainly we are moving quickly to the place where you will soon see functional use of some of the roadways and so on that are blocked at this time. So we are getting somewhere, and we are very happy for that.
Just one last question. I'm looking at both of you, and you both look tired. Both of you have been at the helm of this disaster from beginning. It is 27 days. Correct me if I'm wrong. So how are both of you coping, Mr. Augustine and Mr. Stewart?
Well, let me tell you, it's and thanks for the human interest question. It has been a tough 27 days, to be honest. There are some nights that we get in after 1 or later. There are some days that you're just going. I think that was last week Wednesday, when we had the president here for the music festival, and I received her here and was here with her. I could tell you that morning was a tough morning, despite the beautiful talent and how exceptionally well the young people were doing on stage, I was struggling to keep the eyelids open, struggling through that session. And then that day in particular went from music festival to EID court to visiting the 2 schools to exec council meeting, and then back to a press briefing. So some days are tough like that. And then on top of that, a night or 2 ago, we had a major fire that happened. And major fire night before. And I know I tried to reach out to Director Stewart, couldn't get him. I tried to reach out to all the usual suspects and couldn't get them. I said, you know what? Let them have some sleep in the middle of this. But CERT responded, right? Mr. Thomas and the team at CERT responded very, very well. In fact, communication director was the first person that responded to me, Zayanara, Mr. Llewellyn, and they were able to coordinate and get that done. And so you will imagine that this is happening, but we have several other things happening as well. So every time we have a fire or some disaster of some sort, TIMA still has to respond with that. And it's not just Director Stewart, but also the staff members of TIMA. They have been going these past 27 days, getting in late, getting out early, and have been going non-stop. But then also think of those in the actual field doing the work too. We talk about the boatmen. So it is very tiring work, extremely tiring work. Now might be a good time for me to thank my wife and family for their patience and their understanding through this experience, because it has been extremely tiring, you know. But it's just the work that has to be done, because from where I sit, I see this thing as having the potential to endanger Tobago's economy, our livelihood, our environment in a significant way, and the tourism industry. So I just think it was necessary for me to drop everything else and make this priority number one. Just this morning, at 9 this morning, we met with IMF, and this is the usual statutory meeting with the country as a whole. We met last year as well, so when they come to have their meetings with the country, they meet with the Tobago House of Assembly as well to see how we are doing. And one of the major questions that they have had is really the costing of this bill and the impact it will have on our development allocations and development spend. You know, I just said we just set aside $15 million to start, and I indicated that is nowhere close to what will be required. But you know, for that 15 million set aside, you can well imagine that means us having down the road to shortchange some development program down the road. But it's just the nature of governance. And while we are at it, and the dry season is moving apace, we are in March, but we will soon wake up and we will be on the other side and into the other season, which is the rainy season and the hurricane season. So even from now, we are beginning to monitor what that will look like and what the scientists are saying will happen for the Atlantic hurricane season. And the scientists are projecting that this year can be a crazy one. And so even from this place, we are already thinking about that and what that could mean. So now is also a very good time for us to continuously bruise our knees and pray to the big man up above to ensure that, you know, we can secure, we can keep our island secure. And of course, we do what is necessary to keep our people, our island, our economy secure. It is just what it is. But to answer you in short, it is It is very, very tiring, very, 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 very tiring. And but we just get the work done. We just get the work done, and hopefully, with the additional support of Lieutenant Colonel Hills, Mr. Trim here, the small management team led by Mr. Beckers and so on, it will make the work lighter for those of us at this level. You know, more hands make the work light. We think that's good. Yeah.
Chief, that, good management allow for the escalation of an event. As Mr. Trim would have indicated, that TIMA has been exercising the ICS for quite some time. I recall my first exposure to the incident command system was way back in 2001. So I'm well rehearsed in that method. Now, what we anticipate going forward will require us to look at our structure in a very serious way. Up to a few moments ago, I was having some discussion with the acting chief administrator about the escalation of that structure to allow for business continuity. If there is no continuity in my type of planning, then I don't think I'm doing a fair job to the organization in terms of succession. So even while I'm going to this length of where it is very bruising, good management will allow me to understand that we need to change into a shift system, but there's no pause to start. It has to be a transitionary process, and this is where the team comes in, will come in, and therefore we will get that going as soon as possible. So trust me, I'll be taking some R&R and definitely reboot myself and allow me to rehabilitate properly. Sonia will ask for nothing less, so therefore I have to make sure that. So one of the things I do, I go home straight. They ask me, how you doing? I say, when I finish work, I go home straight, so to ensure that I get the necessary sleep to be back on the job. But really and truly, seriously, it allows for the escalation of the plan to make sure that we have the necessary manpower to take it on. So you have the ODPM, they're on board. You will see those blue jackets hanging around. They are the saints. The blue represent that color to help us through this period where they are providing us with, I think this is their second tour of duty, where they would have bring to the table around 21 personnel. Those are volunteers. Some of them are technical persons who are able to do, for example, the ICs at the Joint Operations Center is managed by the operation chief. There is Lieutenant Hills, and he's doing a fantastic job. And we had Commander Batiste also taking the battle. So there is help. So I feel I sleep a little better, I relax a little better. I take my necessaries to ensure that I'm, sharp at the table to answer your questions, So I'm in good spirit and looking forward to some R&R as well. So I really appreciate the concern shown.
All right. So thank you all very much. We just, I'm being motioned to indicate that, Candice Jackson to big updates on the virtual space. Apologies, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just have one quick question, and this is in relation to the hydrographic surveys and so on that have been completed and the ongoing dives. Has there been anything else detected in the vessel other than fuel?
I don't know. I don't understand any media. No, they're asking me some questions here today. If there's any, to date, what has been detected in the vessel is fuel-like substances, right? The way the survey is done to see if there is fuel-like substances in it. So I'm not sure if the surveillance can pick up other substances in it. What it can certainly identify is if there is fuel locked in it. Think of it this way. And please, for all the high petrochemists and all the scientists in this space, forgive me if I mess up trying to break it down to layman terms. it's like using sensors to be able to see what's in the vessel. And these sensors will show up different colors, essentially, which will tell you if there is hydrocarbon locked into the vessel. So it will not necessarily show up other things, but for sure it will tell us if there is any other fuel-like substance left in the vessel. So I can't say with certainty whether or not there is other substances there. For that to be determined, we will have to do the full wreckage of the vessel. So Director Stewart spoke about tapping. So we spoke about hot tapping previously, as in literally tapping and extracting what's in the vessel without it having to come out on the surface of the water. Once that is done, part of the wreckage arrangement will allow us to have the vessel wrecked and allow forensics to happen when it's wrecked. So I hope that answers your question clearly in terms of what we really know, and I really don't want to speculate. I say thank you all very much. Have a good day.